Hello, Candice here, and I wish to welcome you to Module 2 of the Calm Living Blueprint. Congratulations on completing Module 1. Keep up the awesome work that you're doing. In the warm-up section, we saw that Charlie and Sam both expressed physical sensations of anxiety, right? As many people do that have social anxiety. And in both their cases, resisting their anxious feelings led them to avoid doing things that really mattered to them, like making friends, asking someone they care about on a date, attending a job interview, and speaking up at meetings, which kept them from living the lives they truly wanted to live. So in this module, we're going to focus on anxious feelings and how to deal more effectively with those anxious feelings so that they no longer stop us from doing what truly matters to us. This first video will serve as kind of an introduction to the specific techniques we'll be covering in upcoming lessons. Alright, so let's jump into it. I have a question for you. If you were trekking through the Alaskan wilderness and you suddenly came face to face with a huge grizzly bear, what would you do? Scream? Call for help? Run away? We'll return to that a little later, but first let's answer this question. What are emotions? What are emotions? Scientists actually have a hard time explaining exactly what feelings and emotions are, but most experts tend to agree on these three things. Emotions originate from the middle layer of the brain, known as the midbrain. At the core of any emotion is a complex series of physical changes throughout the body, and these physical changes prepare us to take action. Physical changes in our body from emotions may involve changes in our heart rate, our blood pressure, muscle tone, circulation, and hormone levels, as well as activation of different parts of the nervous system. We notice these changes as sensations. Sensations like butterflies in our stomach, a lump in our throat, watery eyes, clammy hands. I don't know about you, but I've definitely experienced all those sensations at one time or another. Emotions influence us to act in different ways. For example, under the influence of any strong emotion, we commonly make changes to our voice, our facial expression, our body posture, and our behavior. Emotions influence our tendency to do something. However, it doesn't mean we have to do it, or that we have no choice. For example, if you're angry with someone, you may have a tendency to yell at them, but you can choose to talk calmly if you wish. And emotions are closely tied up with our thoughts, memories, and images. When you're feeling afraid, for example, you may have thoughts about what might go wrong, memories of other times that you felt afraid, or mental images of anything from that time of being afraid. That's why we covered anxious thoughts and diffusion in Module 1 before we talked about anxious feelings and dealing with anxious bodily sensations, because becoming better at diffusing will make it easier to deal with anxious feelings. Okay, so oftentimes I'll get asked, do emotions control our behavior? The short answer, no. Our emotions definitely do not control our behavior. I mean, think about it. You can feel angry, but act calmly. You may have the tendency to shout, grimace, clench your fists, or lash out physically or verbally, but you don't have to. You can, if you choose, speak slowly and calmly, maintain a look of serenity on your face, and hold your body in an open, relaxed posture. I'm sure at some point in your life, you have felt afraid, yet you persisted in the face of that fear even though you felt like running away, right? In other words, you had a tendency to run, but you chose not to. We all have experienced this. For instance, when taking a test, asking someone for a date, going for a job interview, or speaking before a group. I've already mentioned that whenever I give a speech in public, I experience anxiety. And yet when I reveal this to my audience, as I usually do during the presentation, they're always kind of curious or amazed at that. They'll say to me, but you look so calm and confident. And that's because even though I feel anxious, like I have my racing heart, my churning stomach, sweaty palms, I'm not acting anxiously. Right? I consciously choose to talk slowly. I consciously choose to breathe slowly and move slowly. And this goes for virtually all public speakers. Even after years of experience, they still commonly feel anxious, but you never know it because they act calmly. So now let's get back to your trek through the Alaskan wilderness. If you suddenly come face to face with a grizzly bear, then obviously you will feel intense fear. And undoubtedly, you'll feel the urge to turn and run. But if you've read your survival manual, you'll know that if you turn and run, you will incite the bear's pursuit instinct. It will chase after you, easily outrun you, and you'd probably be snack food. What you need to do is back away slowly, make no sudden moves or loud noises, and never turn your back on the bear. Many people have survived by following that same advice. They all felt terrible fear that was much out of their control, but they were able to control how they acted. So here's the point that I'm trying to hammer home. Although you don't have much control over your feelings, you can directly control your actions. You may not have control over your feelings that come up, but you do have control over your actions. And this realization will have important practical applications later, because when it comes to making important changes in your life, it's far more useful to focus on what you can control rather than on what you can't. The idea that emotions control your actions is a very powerful illusion. It's like a sunset. When we watch a sunset, the sun appears to be sinking below the horizon, when in fact the sun is not moving at all. It's the earth that's rotating away from it. And even though we've all learned this at school, it's easy to forget. When you're watching that sun sink below the horizon, so to speak, it's almost impossible to believe that it's really stationary. When we're feeling strong emotions, we may do all sorts of things we later regret. We may smash things, shout, abuse people, drink excessively, or engage in any number of destructive behaviors. And it seems as if the emotions were causing us to do this. But in actuality, they're not. We're only acting this way because we've developed bad habits. But if we consciously bring our awareness to how we are feeling and consciously observe how we're behaving, then no matter how intense our emotions are, we can still control our actions. Even when you're furious or terrified, you can stand up or sit down, close your mouth, drink a glass of water, answer the telephone, or scratch your head. You can't stop yourself from feeling angry or afraid or anxious, but you certainly can control how you behave. And what about those cases where people feel paralyzed by fear? It's true that in very rare instances, when people find themselves in a genuinely life-threatening situation, they may become temporarily paralyzed by fear, kind of like a deer frozen in the headlights. However, 99% of the time, when we talk about being paralyzed by fear, it isn't the literal truth. It's just a metaphor, a colorful turn of phrase. The person isn't truly physically incapable of taking action. He or she is simply choosing not to. I like to think of emotions as being like the weather. They're always present and constantly changing. They continually ebb and flow from mild to intense, pleasant to unpleasant, predictable to utterly unexpected. A mood refers to the general tone of emotion across a period of time. A feeling refers to a discrete episode of emotion with distinctive, recognizable characteristics. Okay, so a bad mood is like an overcast day, whereas a feeling of anger or anxiety is like a thunder or a shower of rain. All right, see the difference? We're always experiencing emotion of some sort, just as there's always weather of some sort. However, sometimes it isn't strong or distinct enough for us to describe it easily. I mean, at such times, if someone asks us how we're feeling, we might say fine, or I'm not feeling anything in particular. Alright, so I hope that helps give you a better idea of what emotions are. Before we move on, I want you to remember one thing especially. Remember how we talked about how our minds have evolved to think negatively? Well, the same applies to our emotions. The fight or flight response is a primitive survival reflex that originates in the midbrain. It's evolved on the basis that if something is threatening you, your best chance of survival is either to run away, flight, or to stand your ground and defend yourself, fight. In prehistoric times, this response was life-saving. When a woolly mammoth charged at you, if you couldn't escape, your only hope was to fight it. However, in this modern age, most of us rarely find ourselves in life-threatening situations, and the fight or flight response is often triggered in situations where it's of little or no use to us. Our mind, trying to make sure we don't get killed, sees potential danger almost everywhere. In a moody spouse, a controlling boss, a new job, a party, a long line at the bank, an unflattering reflection in the mirror. You name it. The threat may even come from the mind itself in the form of a disturbing thought or image. Obviously, none of these things are actually life-threatening, but our brain and body react as if they are. If our brain judges an event as harmful, the fight or flight response is triggered, and it rapidly evolves into an unpleasant feeling, such as fear, anger, shock, disgust, or guilt. If our brain judges the event as good or beneficial, we rapidly develop a pleasant feeling, like calm, curiosity, or happiness. Now, the former feelings, like anger, fear, and shock, we tend to describe them as being negative. The latter feelings, like calm, curiosity, or happiness, we tend to describe as positive, right? But in actuality, they're neither positive nor negative. They're all simply feelings. You may be thinking, well, they may simply be feelings, but I much rather have the positive ones to the negative ones. And of course you do, so does everyone. It's human nature. Unfortunately, this preference often becomes so important to us that it leads to serious problems, though, contributing to something called the struggle switch. And in the next lesson, we'll talk about the struggle switch, how to make sure it's turned off for you, and we'll see how you can handle or deal with that struggle switch better to help you be able to do the things that you want to do. Alright, so I'll see you there in the next lesson.